Hey guys, welcome back to You Can't Sit With Us. Over the last several weeks, we've talked about protecting the table God prepares for us. We've talked about fear, we've talked about guilt, we've talked about shame, comparison, self-condemnation, other people's opinions. Last week, we talked about the empty chair at the table and what God wants to fill them with. And this week, I found myself thinking about something that probably is true for a lot of us: family. Because if we're honest, family has a way of bringing the loudest voices to the table. Not because our families are bad, not because relationships aren't worth fighting for, but because we love deeply. And whenever we love deeply, we're vulnerable. When relationships are healthy, family can be one of God's greatest blessings. But when relationships are complicated, it's amazing how quickly fear, disappointment, frustration, and anxiety start pulling up chairs. And maybe you've experienced that. A conversation doesn't go the way you hoped. Someone makes a decision you don't understand. Someone distances themselves. Someone misunderstands your intentions. Someone says something that sticks with you for days. And before you know it, the conversation isn't happening with them anymore. It's happening in your own head. You replay it. You rewrite it. You wonder what you should have said differently. You imagine different outcomes. You carry conversations that ended days ago. And without realizing it, those conversations start taking seats at the table God prepared for you. That's what I want to talk about today. Not difficult people, not difficult families, but difficult thoughts. Because I think sometimes we spend so much time trying to change another person's heart that we stop paying attention to our own. Psalm 23:5 still says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Notice what David doesn't say. He doesn't say God removed everything that was causing him stress. He doesn't say everyone suddenly agreed with him. He doesn't say every relationship was restored. The enemies were still there, but so was God. And I think that's something we need to remember. Sometimes peace isn't found in changing the people around us. Sometimes peace is found in choosing what gets influence inside of us. Because here's the truth. Bitterness wants a seat. Resentment wants a seat. The need to be understood wants a seat. The need to be right wants a seat. Hopelessness wants a seat. Control wants a seat. And honestly, some of those things sound reasonable. We convince ourselves they're justified because we've been hurt. But just because something feels justified doesn't mean it belongs at the table. James 1:19 says, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." I've been thinking about that verse a lot lately. Not because it's easy, because it isn't. But because it reminds me the atmosphere of my heart matters more than winning an argument. It matters more than having the last word. It matters more than proving my point, because if peace is sitting at my table, why would I ask it to leave just to make room for anger? And here's something God has been teaching me. Sometimes I spend so much energy trying to manage someone else's response that I forget I'm responsible for my own. I can't choose someone else's attitude. I can't choose someone else's words. I can't choose someone else's decision. But I can choose whether fear gets another seat. And I can choose whether resentment gets to stay. And I can choose whether grace is invited back tomorrow morning. I've realized something else too. Sometimes we confuse peace with keeping everyone happy. For a long time, I thought if someone was upset with me, I had to fix it. If there was tension, I had to carry it. If someone misunderstood me, I had to explain myself until they didn't. But I've been learning that peace isn't found in controlling every outcome. Peace is found in trusting God with outcomes I can't control. That's hard. Because love wants to fix things. Love wants everyone to be okay. Love wants relationships to feel whole. But sometimes the most loving thing we can do is continue showing up with grace while letting God do the work only He can do. That's not giving up. That's surrender. I think one of the hardest parts of faith is accepting that we can do all the right things and still not get the outcome we hoped for. We can love well, pray faithfully, apologize when we're wrong, keep our hearts soft, leave the door open, and still watch someone make a different choice. That's incredibly hard. But someone else's choice doesn't have the authority to determine whether peace gets a seat at your table. I've had to remind myself of that lately. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. God never asks us to carry someone else's decisions. He asks us to trust Him with them. And those are two very different things. That's the beautiful thing about the table. Every morning, God prepares it again. Every morning, His mercy is new. Every morning, His invitation is the same. Come, sit with me. Bring your disappointment. Bring your questions. Bring the relationships you can't fix. Bring the conversations you keep replaying. Bring the hurt. Bring the confusion. But don't let them become the loudest voices at the table. Because truth is already waiting. Peace is already waiting. Grace and wisdom are already waiting. Jesus is already there. Maybe today your greatest act of faith isn't fixing the relationship. Maybe it's refusing to let the relationship steal your peace. Maybe faith looks like praying instead of replaying. Maybe it looks like trusting instead of controlling. Maybe it looks like sitting at the table God prepared even when your heart still hurts. Because the shepherd never promised we'd arrive at the table after everything was okay. He promised to meet us there in the middle of it. And honestly, I think that's where I found Him the most. Maybe today your family situation hasn't changed. Maybe the conversation you're hoping for still hasn't happened. Maybe the relationship still feels strained, but God's invitation hasn't changed either. You still get to choose what leads the conversation in your heart. So before you spend another day replaying every word, ask yourself this: who's talking the loudest at my table today? Is it disappointment? Is it fear? Is it control? Is it resentment? Or is it God? Because the goal has never been to remove every difficult circumstance. The goal has always been to recognize that even in the middle of them, God has already prepared a place of peace. And maybe that's the part I've been learning myself. The table isn't where we pretend everything is okay. The table is where we bring everything that's not okay to the one who is. That's where grace reminds us to breathe. That's where truth quiets the lies. That's where peace speaks louder than panic. That's where wisdom replaces reaction. That's where Jesus reminds us that His presence has always been greater than our circumstances. Around this table, grace still has a seat. Truth still has a seat. Peace, wisdom still have a seat. Mercy still has a seat. Jesus is still at the head of the table. Everything else, you can't sit with us. I'll see you next week.